Cymone Wilder, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. And I found something so amazing today, going back to the very, very beginning of your Instagram, because
Uh-oh.
what a journey you have been on. Do you realize that over 500 weeks ago, the first piece of art that you posted on your Instagram was a mural on the side of a wall? No, not a mural. It was hand painted. It was a sign. Saying it was a mural would say it's too fancy. We're talking Southern advertising, hand painted signs. And the first one you put up was "See me like I see you." Beautiful.
I don't even know if I remember that. That's crazy.
Well, I do, because I went back to the beginning, Cymone. And when I look at this journey that you've been on, we never saw you in the first days of Instagram. We saw your brother. We saw all of your friends. We saw you exploring as a photographer. We saw you doing really great type. But my only critique was it was too trendy. It was what everyone else was doing. 2020, as you probably remember, the wheels fell off the wagon that is called America.
Yep.
And on the other side of this, you come out with this Keith Haring, old school MTV bumpers. Your artwork now looks like a high school notebook, right? Where you're learning how to do organic and natural doodling. You're learning 3D texturing. What we're talking about is type composition. So when people look at your artwork and what you'll be showing everybody how to do at Into the Woods, you know how to do what everybody else is doing. You've already kind of mastered that lockdown that's kind of, it belongs on a building that's only white and black in a neighborhood that has no colors anywhere in it, where coffee's $8 a cup and sold by somebody who's super pretentious. Like, you know how to design that world, but now you're in this grittier, looser, organic thing, while you're also going back to that first thing, exploring creativity and your own love with yourself at the same time. Cymone, you are a fascinating individual. Let's get started.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're working on this more like loose, organic type of typography. You're going to talk to everybody at Into the Woods about how to use inexpensive tools, how to use like natural grit. It's interesting because the applications that we all have and our iPads and desktops, laptops, they've made perfection so easy, right? Hold down Shift key, snap the Apple Pencil to get that perfect straight line. But you're the person that says, I love to draw letters bad. But what you're really doing is you're making the letters speak to us. You're putting personality in there. You're making the letters talk.
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide to just say, to hell with all this modern technology? Somebody needs to do something that's a little bit more raw, going back to sort of the beginning of modern typography, through activism, through protests, through people in New York City putting things on the side of streetcars, not to be vandals, but to be heard.
I mean, at its core, I feel like this is a process or a style of thinking that I've always kind of bought into, just because I went to an expensive school, could barely afford to be there. Even with a ton of scholarship, I could barely afford to be there. And I just didn't have the money to get all of these tools and all of these expensive programs. So I had to just make great work with what I had at my fingertips. And that's kind of always been this thread through my work, is like, how can I do this thing? How could I make stuff as great as my peers, maybe even better, with the shit that I have around the house, or, these crumpled up pieces of paper, these things that are occurring in real life. And I think that's kind of this sauce that I have that really everybody has access to. And I think it's just more honest. It's cool to like make these perfect, beautiful letters, but is that honest? Is that what my voice sounds like? No, I like it to feel crunchy and gritty and real, like you can touch it and feel it.
But it's so interesting you say, is this what my voice sounds like? Because let's look at one of your sort of benchmark projects in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
When you did that girl Lele for Nickelodeon, okay?
Yeah.
The clients understood your look and appreciated the imperfections, because in many ways, Gabrielle, who plays Sadie, her relationship with Lele, it's not too different than your relationship with your second Instagram account, which was the first Instagram account I found. I'm like, it's going to be hard to interview her about typography when all I get to see are all these beautiful self-portraits over and over again. But like, because I think that you're putting so much personality into your work, someone like Nickelodeon doing a project in 2021 that you and I both know would never have happened 20 years ago in 2001, or probably even 2019, if we're really being honest. But like, they chose you because of that personality in your work matches so well with the character Cymone and Lele. And I just think that goes to show a lot by you saying, I don't have all the money to do all the expensive things that everybody else is doing at my, pedigree art school, but I have my own struggle. And if I put that into the work, that will resonate way more than holding down the shift key and snapping that straight line on the eye pencil, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And so when you worked with Nickelodeon, did they come to you and just say, we just want you? Like, what does that brief look like? Because clearly you had to be like, you guys know I'm not using fonts, right? You guys know that, like, after I pencil it out and ink it, we can't just mess with the kerning. That's called starting all over, bro.
I mean, Nickelodeon was great because they came with, a tight brief, but it really was just like, how can you put your own, style into it? And I think, they wanted to represent things that Lele loves, like old school hip hop and designer brands. And it was like, how can we make these things come together to make something that feels unique to her, but reflects my style, at its core. And I think that's something we were able to do. And that's why it's still one of my favorite projects, because it's on Nickelodeon, it's on all these kids' TVs, but it's something that feels like it's true to Lele and it's true to my own style.
But you also just described the very curvy and bizarre path to being a successful professional. You have a big client that said, we want you to do what you do. And that's what every creative is dreaming of, to get to the moment where people hire them, to not like, hey, here's a brief of 10 people that we couldn't afford. You think you could knock this off? But no, being like, this woman specifically resonates with our character, our story, our journey, because in many ways you are that character, like the similarities between you and the Lele being the AI, like sort of avatar to guide this young girl to find how to be comfortable with herself. Like, that's the pursuit that you're on as well right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, read the brief and go, are they reading my diary? Like, what's going on? Like, how did they know that I'd be so perfectly fit for this? But like, once again, talking about how you've been able to take typography, put your own personal thumbprint in it. When you got hired to do the work that you did for Stranger Things, like I said at the beginning, you have a looseness that looks like a high schooler not paying attention to algebra, having fun on a Trapper Keeper. Now, you and I both know that it's way more sophisticated and refined than that, but it has that sort of looseness. So when Stranger Things hired you, perfect fit. Because at a very professional and a very communicative level, you're doing something that you could see one of those characters doing when they're like thinking about all these bizarre side quests in their life and don't really give two shits about what that teacher's saying in front of them in a high school setting. And therefore, your Stranger Things artwork is a perfect reflection of putting us into the moment and the lives of those characters that everybody loves so much.
Yeah, and I think like, everybody always asks me, like, when did you first start lettering? Did you go to school? When did you first start to like see that stuff? And I always say, like, I found this style, this interest, popping up in the margins of my notes in class,
Love
like
that.
Everybody's doodling in the margins. Mine just always happened to be little letters, block letters, bubble letters, all that good stuff. And it kind of just developed from there. So, the Stranger Things collaboration was A+, because it's that, that groovy sci-fi vibe, which is, what my work is already doing. And to combine that with the subject matter and all that, it was a perfect match.
It also helps that when you just post, hey, I work for Stranger Things, everybody freaks out and goes, what? Because like everybody knows what that is, right? Like,
this is the first time my mom has been able to tell her friends what I do. And people are like, oh, okay, I got it.
Hey, Cymone, I had an idea for a series of podcasts where I interview creative people's parents and be like, what does your son or daughter do? Explain to me what they do in Hollywood. Explain to me what their artwork is. Because I literally think it would be fascinating, because you put a gun to my dad's head and like, hey, what's your son do for a living? He's like, I don't know. He like draws and talks to people. I have no idea. He goes to Disneyland a lot. I don't know what he does. Let's talk about this though, because, and I don't mean this as any offense, but like, you were doing very trendy work. Like, you were kind of doing the typography that, no offense, everybody else was doing. But I kind of think we see a scene, it's kind of like when a kid gets a guitar. The first thing you do is you don't start writing songs, you start doing cover songs. So in many ways, pre-2020, you were kind of a cover artist of what other type trends were happening. But where did you decide to kind of break out and put this much voice and personality and texture and just kind of really remove yourself from the status quo and go in a way more like authentic throwback vibe?
I mean, I was, I was trying to figure it all out. I was trying to figure out what my voice was, what's my style. Everybody's trying to find that. And I think for the longest time I was, as you're saying, in this period of doing covers, I was copying my favorite artists and doing what they were doing. And at one point, I think I got a little bit more in touch with myself. Like, I'm a Black woman in this dumb country. And I think I just like was being faced with that truth more and more each day. And instead of kind of running away from that identity, I was running towards it. And I think that's kind of when you start to see this style define itself in my work. And I don't know, I just like yearn so much for authenticity in my relationships and the people I know. So why wouldn't I reflect, that level of authenticity in my work? And I think when I started to discover that that's my sweet spot, I think that's when it started to show up in my work really well. And that just happened to happen around 2020. Of course, there were, fun events and things that happened that year that really sparked that reflection. But here we are.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to me that when you were in a moment in time when you wanted to turn up your personal voice, you also turned up your art style and really put a lot of voice in there. And, I have my own opinions, but I'd love to know why you think that your style is such a good fit for protest and activism. Because when you're just being cute and coy, it really works. But I don't know, man, as I was looking over your stuff and seeing when that handwritten font is over the front of, images of DC or talking about being Black, being a woman, having control over women's bodies. Like there's something about that style when it's combined with protest and activism, it stands out even more. Why do you think it's such a better fit than like Helvetica, bro?
I mean, Helvetica's wonderful. It great.
Is.
But I think just like, if you look back on, a lot of the things that I get inspired by are, old signage, stuff done by hand on posters. If it happened to be at a protest for something that, we're passionate about, that's even better. I think my work always just does better. I do better when it's a subject that I am passionate about. And that right now happens to be a lot of these social justice issues that are affecting me, my family, my community. And when that passion's there, it just shows up in the work even stronger. So I think that's kind of why it works better, it resonates with people more, just because it's like I've been saying, it's honest, it's me. People, know it's not bullshit. So
yeah, it's something, everybody talks about organic or be authentic. But it means so much more when the type is coming from a Black woman in America who's like, call me crazy, but I'd like to be in control of my body. I mean, call me nuts over here, but that's something that's important to me. And when you worked your typography in those moments, I think that it really, really shines. So a compliment to you, and that you actually know how to teach people how to do typography and how to put personality into it. We have artwork that is really good for Netflix and Nickelodeon TV, merchandise and logos, but it's also really good for having your voice heard out on the street, encouraging people to go vote. Because like you said, it is all inspired by old hand painted signs, a very primitive way of modern communication. So I think that once again, because you're exploring yourself, as you're exploring your creativity, that authenticity is really speaking loud, and your type is really loud too. Like you can't miss the message that you're trying to get across. Let's talk a minute about how you choose your efficiency of words, because you get big ideas down to 5 words or less quite often.
I'd like to say that it's some, deep process of me distilling and synthesizing these heavy thoughts, but really it's just like, I feel like I can be more creative with 3 words instead of 20 words.
Yeah.
So it's just like, how can I say exactly what I need to say in the shortest way possible? Because that just gives me more room to play around and fill the space the way I like to. So I wish it was, a really meaningful process, but it's really just like I'm probably lazy more than anything.
I'm going to ask you that question again. I'm going to need you to give me a very poetic answer. But it matches well because we see the attention span getting shorter and shorter. And, kind of dating my age a little bit, but I said that your artwork reminds me of Keith Haring in the old MTV bumpers. And if we think about those old MTV bumpers, in 15 seconds, they were trying to tell you to keep watching MTV. And that's what we see on TikTok all day long, are 15-second short videos to keep watching TikTok. So in many ways, they were kind of already there. And like when I look back at the Tell Me Who You Are illustration, that has some of those bubbly, fun letters in there mixed with blocky letters. And I just look at that, I'm like, she is somehow an old soul. Like, like you're not as old as the artwork that you're making. So you've definitely like done some digging around and kind of try to find a way to bring back like these, it almost seems classical now, but they were a very old and retro way to communicate. And you're really nailing that with your work. Why do you think that we love natural textures so much? Because technology has only tried to make it as mistake-free as possible, but somehow we love, when silkscreen stuff gets blown out or a little bit of distress or dither or dirt gets in there. Like there's something about it that makes it feel organic and real. And so I love that you're going the opposite way of technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think people just want to, I don't know, on the foundation, I think people just want to feel like this is something almost I could have done. Like if I'm the audience, or the viewer, like to see this, little mess up or these little strokes and lines just finding their way, like, it's like, oh, I could have kind of done that. So it feels like something that, the viewer can relate to a little bit better. I think that's part of it. And I think just like feeling like it's a real thing. I think we like things that are real more than we like stuff on screens. Every single day we see all this digital stuff and all these ads and all of this, all of this noise coming from a digital space. I think that it just leaves us wanting more in the real world.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that the more digital the world gets, the more there's an appreciation for real world physical goods. Like it literally makes no sense that digital music is 99% of how people consume music, but vinyl sales are also bigger than they've ever been.
Right.
And if you think about it, the advent of the vinyl with the digital download, it's the perfect equation of you get the digital download, which is easy. So, you and I aren't denying today that iPads and, computers, laptops have made our life extremely easy. So that's the digital music. But when you look at the actual album, it's something tactile that we can hold and we can put on our shelf that say, I'm a fan of this band. Like I love Leon Bridges' music. And this is something people can see when they come in my house because the album is displayed on, my credenza or whatnot. So I absolutely think that you're right. And because so many people are doing digital because it just makes sense, you find yourself sticking out in the marketplace because you're not a part of that noise. You're now seen as like, a retro act or a breath of fresh air just because you're kind of doing something very much different than, 90% of the people in your space are doing.
I don't even think my goal when I sit down to draw something or whatever is to be so unique or different. It's just, this is the style that resonates most with me. And I think, certainly there's an audience for that. So
have you ever done, silk screening or any sort of like tactile artwork like that where there really is like a lot of natural distress that you're always fighting? Or have you just figured out how to do a lot of this through digital tools?
I mean, I've definitely figured out how to do a lot of it through digital tools, but you just can't get the real thing when it's like in the physical world with you. Like you just can't really duplicate that. So I know like I did a book cover for an Angie Thomas book, and like I got a piece of real plywood and I spray painted it with, I cut out these stencils and I spray painted it and I weathered it, and just like there's no way I could have gotten all these little bits and little
Mm-hmm.
secret pieces that like, are small pieces, but when they come together, create this true and honest thing. Like there's no way I could have done that on a computer. Like I could have gotten real close, but there's just something, there's a sauce in there that you can't get on a computer.
And I believe that one of the things that we would have in common is that when you work with natural textures, there is just something like organic and visceral and real to it all, right? But then having the luxury of perfecting it digitally, you know what I mean? Like, okay, so this piece of wood and this spray paint's awesome, but
Yeah.
that looks sloppy and not cool. So you can kind of, do a little bit of erase here, a little bit of editing there. So there really is
Yeah.
a nice hybrid, but I do believe that when the bulk of the work comes from the real world, it just stands out now because people are used to right angles and perfection everywhere that they look.
Yeah, and I think it like breaks down barriers when you can make these things in the real world. Like I don't know, these tools just get so crazy expensive. Adobe stuff gets more expensive every year.
Oh, no, no,
There's
no.
just
It's not expensive. It's just a small monthly payment. Don't.
yeah, that you can never get out with, and you have to sign up with blood and all
Yeah.
this. But I don't know. I feel like people forget, like like I breathe hot breath on the back of my phone camera and smear it to like do half of my stuff. It's like that's for free. You can
Yeah.
do that for free. I mean, if you have a phone, of course, but
Right.
like we don't need all this stuff to make things that feel really good.
No, and it's funny to me when you look, there's tons of websites and tons of people that have made, decent money showing people the shortcuts. We all get into certain clients, certain budgets, certain jobs where it's just churn and burn. You're just doing work to get it approved, not to like do your best work, like the path that you and I are on. And I understand that's just simple math. Like everybody can't be doing guitar solos all the time. Somebody's got to be playing the bass and drums and keeping the rhythm, right? But when you do take the extra time to find your own textures and put your own grain into it, it does make a difference. Because how bad do you hate it, Cymone, when you see somebody use the distressed font and you're like, oh, so those two E's on the side of the barn, every time the wind blew, it hit both E's the same way. Every time the sun
Right.
set, it hit each E equally. Every time a bird shit on this barn, they hit both of the E's. How did they do it? And when you literally go out in the backyard and you make a stencil and you spray paint it, you couldn't make both of those E's the same if you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, and that's why like when I first started like adding some of these textures in, I like guarded the process with my life as if, it was just like no one else can know what I do. This is so, but like that's why now I'm just like do exactly what I do, because 100 people can do exactly what I do the exact same way, and it's going to come out 100 different ways.
Absolutely.
Like that's the sweet spot of doing something in the real world. No one can do it exactly like you do it.
Absolutely. But if I were to show you, these are the fonts, these are the colors, these are the halftone, 45 degrees, this halftone pattern, you can do factory work, but you're talking about something very, very different. And you're right. When you do your workshop at End of the Woods, if everybody sat down and was using the exact same tools, you're going to end up with 50 different versions of that story. And then when you think about it in the marketplace, that allows clients, they could have got several, like Nickelodeon could have got several people to do marker drawings or whatever for whatever they were looking for that Gros Lele. But when they saw lots of different people, they said, okay, here's 10 different artists and do this for us. But we feel like Cymone Wilder is our character, And so then it becomes about your art and your personality, which I think if you want to get hired for any job, that's the biggest compliment you can get, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's something that's just fascinating about you. And I have now done over 1,650 episodes of Adventures in Design. I've interviewed over 1,000 different creatives. And I always love when somebody throws something new at me I've never seen before. And you're on this path where you're working on self-love, but you talk about that the same way that you talk about exploring creativity. And I've met a lot of artists that didn't like themselves or had a lot of sort of complications with who they were. And in many ways, it made them great people. But I've never heard anybody compare the path to loving oneself as the same pursuit as creativity. And I was like, damn, that's why I love doing this job, because everybody truly is different. There's a lot of things that I see, patterns that I see over and over again that is human nature. But Cymone, when I was reading some of that, it was just like so beautiful and so thought-provoking. And then when I went back to the beginning of your Instagram, it resonated with me even more because you used to never even put a photo of yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of years span where there was hardly even any people of color in your Instagram. It was like you would not know, like if I were to meet you for a prospective job and you showed up at a cafe in Nashville, I'm like, oh, you're Cymone Wilder. Okay, how are you doing? Nice to meet you. Let's just talk about that for a little bit, because I don't think that many people have ever thought about treating themselves like a creative project. And I think that's fascinating and beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, so there's two things of what you said. Like, there was definitely a period when I was not showing my face, and that was part of it was like, I don't truly love myself, and I don't love the way I show up in pictures. But there was also just like, I'm a Black woman. I don't know how many jobs I'm going to miss out on for people, seeing that first. And so for the longest time, I was like, I just won't put anything up. And then, like you said, somebody can hire me just based on the work. And then if I show up and they happen to see I'm a Black person, cool, whatever. But then, as my career's gone on, I'm just like, that's actually one of my greatest strengths, is that I'm a Black woman. This is my unique thing that I bring to the table. But that didn't really fix the self-love side of it.
Nice, honest answer.
I went into the only way I know how is like, everything we do is a practice.
Yeah.
This is a muscle I can grow, just like going to the gym and, do an arm day every day. My arms are going to get bigger. Even if I'm terrible at it, I'm still going to get stronger. And so that's kind of how I've treated this. Is I'm a creature of habit. And if I can use that, part of, my personality to grow this muscle, then that's what I'm going to do. And, it doesn't hurt that now I have 1,000 headshots, but that's a bonus to it.
They're really nice headshots too. You're a hell of a photographer. Like, your lighting and stuff in there is fantastic. Being an artist that's, gotten some acclaim and has gotten some nice national projects and doing things like Into the Woods, where you go into a room and you speak in front of people. One of the things that drew me into being a creative is I realized that when I did good work, I got good compliments. And that dopamine was very real to me. It validated this little boy who felt like nobody gave two shits about him as he was growing up. Mm-hmm. Are you finding a lot of self-confidence in Cymone as a person through the compliments that Cymone gets as an artist?
Unfortunately, I think no. I feel like the compliments that I get in my art, I'm not able to translate well into me, the person. And I think that's why I've had to do this self-portrait project, is to, I don't know, compliment myself, I guess. I don't know. Like, I have a hard time believing people when they say nice things about me. So yeah, there's a bit of a disconnect. And I think there's, part of, I have my little side Instagram for this project, because I'm trying to make sure I'm not just doing it for the little dopamine hits, because I absolutely would. And I'd eat that up. But I think there's just a level of me needing to like believe it for myself. I need to like believe just for me that I am a beautiful, creature or whatever. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but
I think that's one of the best answers I've heard in a very, very long time. And I get it. I can see where you are treating yourself like one of your projects. Mm-hmm. And what do we all know about our projects? You like it the minute that it's done, but give me 5 minutes, I'll learn how to criticize it. And, people would always come into my booth and look at all my artwork and go, what's your favorite piece? I go, my favorite thing is always the last thing I've done, because I haven't had enough time to learn how to hate it yet. And, people are like, you design your own tattoos? I'm like, are you kidding me? That's a life sentence of like, damn it, why did I draw it that way? Why did I do that? That would be a life sentence of hell, critiquing my forearm for the rest of my life.
Yep.
Cymone, you are truly an individual in every single way. I hope that you find out just how beautiful that you are. And I hope that the world keeps finding out how amazing your artwork is, because it is a breath of fresh air. And I can easily figure out why post 2020, this career is on the rise. You've become yourself. You're standing out. you're kind of a perfect person for this time, and I hope that it's rewarding you well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Hopefully I can let that sink in completely.
Now, it was all a lie. Everybody's just lying to you, Cymone. Those are not compliments you can believe. Hey, I'll see you at the end of the woods.
Yeah, absolutely.